Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Deep and Effective Big Book Study. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Hope everybody is doing well today. This is episode 6, my friends, which we are going to be breaking down the doctor's opinion. A little side note before we get started. In my last episode, episode 5, when I talked about the traditions, when I talked about the principles, on step 8, I had a typo and I typed in willingness instead of brotherly love. So I just want to make sure I get that clarified that's not correct. It's not willingness, it's brotherly love. And as always, before we get going, we want to invite God into this. And I'm going to open this up with the set-aside prayer and ask God to help me be a little more eloquent when I speak today. So let's take a little quick moment of silence and I'll read the set-aside prayer. And my friends, if you're not familiar with this prayer, you can go online, and I've said this before, there's many variations of this thing. Pick one that speaks to you and, go with it. And I just have one here brought up, and I'm going to go for it. God, please help me set aside everything I think I know about myself, my disease, the 12 steps, and especially you, so that I may have an open mind and new experience with all these things. Please help me see the truth. Amen. All right, right on. So we got God into this thing. Like I said, we're going to be talking about the doctor's opinion. And, as always, I'm going to drop in my email address. It's recoveredalcoholic1939@gmail.com. If you got questions, comments, concerns about anything, don't feel free to shoot me a message. I'm offering out sponsorship to men and women. Guys, I can get you hooked up with myself or others, and ladies, I can get you in touch with some other women that are very strong in the program. Also, I've got 2 meetings that I attend that are very strong solution-based big book meetings. One is a all-men's meeting, meets Thursdays at 6 p.m. Central. I'll drop in the Zoom code and password here. And the other one is on Sundays at 6 p.m. Central as well. It's men and women, and I'll drop in the passcode and password here for Zoom. So right on. Okay, so let's go to page 25, and because this is the Deep and Effective Big Book Study, let's let the Big Book be our voice, and I'll read why I call it the Deep and Effective Big Book Study. So, page 25, middle of the page. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves. And I read this in the opening of every episode, and it's not just words on paper, it's my actual experience. And I have this experience as a direct result of these steps in this book. And you too, my friend, can have this experience if you follow these clear-cut directions. Okay, so let's get right to it. I got a couple comments from the viewers, and they were expressing that the time frame that I'm making these videos is just right? And that's the thing. I'm trying to make them palatable for everybody, but also need to capture as much information as I can. But then again, I don't want to make them all, drag them out. I could talk for an hour on every page in this book, but we can't do that on this channel. So let's go to the doctor's opinion, guys. And we need to understand something, is that we're going to start learning about alcoholism. I've said this in other episodes. I'll say it in this one, and I'm probably going to continue to say it, is that alcoholism, the disease of alcoholism, is not the same as chemically dependent, substance abuse sufferers, any type of disorders, addictive personalities, a hard drinker, or whatever other title that exists out there. The disease of alcoholism is its own unique thing. Right? And actually, only about 8 to 10% of the population actually has the disease of alcoholism. We need to understand this. And this is one of the most overlooked words in our book. And the reason that the doctor's opinion is as soon as we get into it, why is it first? Because he's going to explain to us what truly separates us, not from other people, but from other drinkers. What truly gives me... what truly makes me the real alcoholic. See, it's 2 parts. right? It's the physical allergy, which we're going to talk about in this chapter. And it's the mental obsession. See, the first step is broken down into two parts. That's what that dash is. When it says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, and that's that hyphen, that our lives become unmanageable. The first step is two parts, therefore it requires a two-part explanation. And we're going to talk about the first part of the first step in the doctor's opinion. And this is what truly makes me an alcoholic. All right? And I'm going to start on the top of the page. This is XXV, and I'm reading out the 4th edition, guys. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. So it's telling me right here that the plan of recovery is in this book, and only in this book, and not just because I read it, because that's my experience, right? So, and we need to understand how alcohol affects the real alcoholic on the body. That's what we need to start understanding, is what actually happens because of alcoholism. And we're going to get into this thing called phenomenon of craving here in a minute. And this is what truly separates me. And I'm going to read some more and kind of jump around. And later on the page, he says, in late 1934, I attended a patient who, though had been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, was an alcoholic of a type I had come to regard as hopeless. So the type of alcoholic that Dr. Duncan Silkworth is talking about is the real alcoholic. This is the type of alcoholic that we're going to establish throughout the book. We're going to separate everything else and the real alcoholic, because there's a difference, and the book goes into great detail. They spent a lot of time and effort making sure we understood there was a difference between the real alcoholic and everything else, because there is. And I'll keep reading the rest of this page. He said, in the course of his 3rd treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning possible means of recovery. And this is all Oxford Group stuff right here, my friends. And listen to this. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must, that's one of those musts that don't exist in the book, must do likewise with still others. So let's just think about this for a minute. We aren't even into the steps. We are just barely scratching the surface of this book. On the first page of the doctor's opinion, they're already telling me the solution to alcoholism is that I have to go be of service, that I have to go carry the message. I have to work with others. Already, right out of the gate. I love it. And then he says, this has become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. This man and over 100 others have recovered. My friends, I am a recovered alcoholic. I am not recovering. I recovered from the disease of alcoholism over a decade ago. It would be an insult for you to call me a recovering alcoholic, because that means that you're saying I'm still sick. It's an insult to say recovering in Alcoholics Anonymous, because you're saying that Alcoholics Anonymous, the program, doesn't work. If we're always still recovering, that means we're still sick. And that's not true. And it's actually a bunch of treatment center horse shit is where that all comes from. It has nothing to do with Alcoholics Anonymous. We are recovered alcoholics. Let's see. Let's jump over to the next page, top of XXVI. And I'm going to kind of break down that last paragraph. It says, these men may well have a remedy for thousands of such situations. And I love this last sentence right here. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves. What is outside the scope of that? Those two words, absolutely anything. And I'm here to tell you, my experience can back this sentence up 100%. Everything in this book I can rely on, at least in the first 164 pages. I'm going to read some more off this page because it's important. And before we get going deeper into the book, we have to remember who Silkworth was. This guy was the top dog in his field, right? Silkworth was the man. Right? He's gone on record to work with over 10,000 alcoholics in his career. Right? He was the utmost authority in this field. So what he has to tell us is so vitally relevant. Right? It was an absolute honor for him to be able to put this stuff in this book, and because they valued his opinion so much. So I'm going to read some more. Right? In this statement, he confirms that we have suffered alcoholic torture. Must that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. See, my body is what separates me as from a distinct entity. It did not satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life, that we're in full flight from reality, or we were outright mental defectives. These things were true to some extent, in fact, to a considerable extent with some of us. But we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. And this is a very important sentence right here. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out the physical factor is incomplete. Why? Why would it be incomplete if I was to fail to tell you about the physical allergy? Because I would be failing to tell you what makes us the real alcoholic. See, the other part of the first step is the mental obsession, right? And anybody can have the mental obsession over anything. But unless I have the physical allergy and the mental obsession, that's what makes me the real alcoholic, right? You with me? And more on this page. The doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. As laymen, our opinions as its soundness may of course mean little, but as ex-problem drinkers, we can say that his explanation makes good sense. And I love this next sentence. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account. You see, my whole life, people were saying, why can't you just be right? Why can't you just be normal? Why can't you drink like other people? And the reality of it is I truly didn't know. I didn't understand that when I went to meet the buddies at the bar at noon for a couple quick beers, the next thing I know it's 10 o'clock at night and I'm still there and I haven't taken care of any of my responsibilities. I was supposed to be out running errands and I was going to swing in for a quick beer, but it's 10 hours later and I'm still drinking. So when I started to learn about the physical allergy, right? The phenomenon of craving, I said, oh my God, that makes perfect sense. That explains why I just couldn't be normal when it came to drinking. Can you relate to that? Because that's what we're talking about. Last paragraph on this page is absolutely one of the most vital things in the book. It says, though we work out our solution on the spiritual as well as altruistic plane. So when I came into AA, I had no idea what altruistic means. So as always, my friends, I've got my handy dandy dictionary here, and I will read what altruistic means. Helping others, showing concern for the welfare of others. So you're telling me that the solution is spiritual, which means God, and altruistic, which means helping others. So here is the solution to alcoholism in one sentence. Here is the entire program in one sentence. God and service. It couldn't be more simple. And here's another word that I want to share with you. It's the word plain that I just read. Level of existence, consciousness, or development. So what my consciousness is going to become about, the plane of higher consciousness, is God and service. Man, that's some powerful stuff, and that's exactly what has happened in my life as a result of this program. So let's jump over to XVII. I believe that's 27 in Roman numerals. And like I was saying before, you got to remember that Silkworth was the man. He was the utmost authority in this thing. And what he does in this chapter is he basically sells out the medical community. He basically says that we don't have an answer for this, right? And back in the time when he was doing this, it could have been absolute ruin for his business, right? Medical heresy is what he's about to commit in this chapter, and I'll read it. Doctors have realized for a long time that some form of moral psychology was of urgent importance to alcoholics, but its application presented difficulties beyond our conception. See, he's saying we don't have a clue how to deal with these people. What with our ultra-modern standards, our scientific approach to everything, we are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge. So, and here's another little side note. So when the first edition came out, he did not attach his name to this. At the end of the, in this chapter, there was no William Duncan Silkworth. It didn't exist because of what I was saying, because he was afraid that it wasn't going to be well received, and if it wasn't, then that would have been the end of his career, right? But what ended up happening is because it became so well received with everyone, especially in the medical community, is he went back and said, okay, now you can put my name in the book. So a little history note there. So on the same page, said many years ago, one of the leading contributors to this book, this is Bill Wilson, came under our care in the hospital, and while here he acquired some ideas which he put into practical application in one. And these are ideas from the Oxford group. These were the 4 absolutes. And listen to this again. The solution is already... They're talking about the solution in the doctor's opinion. I love it. Later he requested the privilege of being allowed to tell his story to other patients. Right? See, this is what this is. Carrying the message is a privilege. It's an honor. It's not something to be endured. It's not something that I'm like, oh shit, I got to go work with another alcoholic again. No, this is a privilege, and this is how we should be approaching it. And if we all started to take the mindset of what a privilege this is, well, we would have better success rates in the rooms today. I'm sure of it. Last paragraph on this page. The unselfishness of these men, we have come to know them. The entire absence of profit motive and their community spirit is indeed inspiring to one who has labored long and wearily in this alcoholic field. They believe in themselves and still more in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death. Again, there's a solution. It's all about God. Okay, let's jump over to page XXVII 28, and now we're going to get into the physical allergy. So you got to remember that in the doctor's opinion, it's almost exclusively about the physical allergy. There's a little mental obsession sprinkled in that he talks about, but Silkworth was a medical doctor. He understood the body. He wasn't a therapist. He wasn't a psychologist. He wasn't here to tell us about how this obsession worked on the alcoholic. He was here to tell us how the physical allergy worked on the alcoholic. And here it is. We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is the manifestation of an allergy. That the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average tempered drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form. So it doesn't say that I can't use alcohol again. It says that I can't safely use alcohol again. And once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things humans, their problems pile up on them and they become astonishingly difficult to solve. And can you relate to that? Man, that's my life in a nutshell. I love this next paragraph. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The message which can enter and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. So again, the solution to alcoholism is a power greater than myself. And just not drinking and going to meetings ain't a power greater than myself. We feel after many years of experience that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up among them. There's that word again, altruistic, serving others. Right? So Silkworth right here is simply saying that we don't know of anything better. And guess what? We still don't to this day. This is still the best game in town for the real alcoholic. Last paragraph on this page, some of the most pertinent information. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it's injurious, they cannot, after time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they succumb to desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery. Let's break down these 2 paragraphs here. There's so much information going on. So when we read that men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol, right? I have to stop and analyze this for a minute and think about it. So here's what happens when every human being on the planet, alcoholic or not, drinks alcohol, right? Goes into the stomach, then it goes to the liver, then it goes into the bloodstream, and then it goes to the brain, or however the process works. I'm not exactly sure. But you know what I'm saying. So there's the physicality of alcohol on a human being. And once it gets into the bloodstream, it goes to the brain, and it will produce some level of euphoria. Everybody has their own unique experience with it, right? Alcoholic or not. But there's something so much greater going on when it's the disease of alcoholism. You see, the effect that alcohol produces in me is so much greater than just that physical buzz that we get. You know, that little bit of euphoria or whatever, that drunk feeling. What alcohol, the effect it does for me. See, because I have this thing called the spiritual malady, right? I have this certain level of emptiness, if you will. I have this hole inside of me that cannot be filled with anything. And when I take a drink and when I put alcohol into me, something magical happened. You see, drinking was nothing short of a spiritual experience for me. You see, it talks about this restlessness, this irritability, and this discontentedness. That's what's happening inside of me. And it's only alcohol that will extinguish that ugliness that exists in me. You with me? And I'm going to read something from pages 83 and 84. And I'm going to tell you exactly the effect that alcohol produced in my life. And these are the 9-step promises, my friends. Not the promises and not the 12 promises, but the 9-step promises. And they come from pages 83 and 84. Right? See, alcohol is doing for me something that I could never do for myself. And I'm going to read a few examples and tell me if you can relate to this. Right? See, when I have a few drinks, I'm going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. When I have a few drinks, I don't regret the past or wish to shut the door on it. When I have a few drinks, I comprehend the word of serenity and I know peace. Right? When I have a few drinks, the feeling of uselessness and self-pity disappears. I could go on and on and on through these 9-step promises, right? When I have a few drinks, fear of people and economic insecurity leave me. Oh my God, I was terrified of the world. But put a couple drinks in me, man, I'm ready to go. And then lastly, I suddenly realized that alcohol is doing for me what I cannot do for myself. That is the sensation that it's producing in my life. So much greater than just the buzz. Right? That restlessness, irritability, and discontentedness goes away. And once I start to drink, I take that one drink, I trigger the allergy, well then I'm off to the races. I can't predict with any certainty how long I'm going to drink. It could be a day, it could be 3 days. And on that last sentence on top of XXIX, that first paragraph, it says, this is repeated over and over. That's insanity, is it not? Repetition. Unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's little hope of his recovery. See, alcoholism is hopeless, my friends. Right? And they're telling me in this paragraph that I must understand this is what step 1 is about. That there is little hope of my recovery. But Alcoholics Anonymous offers hope. That is our message. The next paragraph is all about hope. And I'll read it. On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, and I promise you're not going to understand this on day 1. I didn't. Once the psychic changes occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, hopeless, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only effort necessary that he be required to follow a few simple rules. I think I've said this before in one of the other episodes, that I'll say this, the easiest thing in the world for me to do as a recovered alcoholic is not drink. And this is exactly what this paragraph is telling me. Because when I have that psychic change as a result of these 12 steps, my complete way of doing, thinking, feeling changes. The obsession to drink will be removed, and as long as I stay in fit spiritual condition, it will never return. And again, not because I read it in the book, but because it's my own experience. And then it says that we're required to follow these few simple, well, what are these rules? Right? Well, it's easy to say the steps, but let's go even simpler. And if we go to page 568, we will get these 3 simple rules: willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness. Those are the simple rules that I have to follow. Let's stay on the page, keep reading a little bit more. And I'll start with the sentence. Although he gives all that is in him is often not enough. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce this essential psychic change. Right? No human power. Not a group of drunks. Nothing, all these little catchphrases and catchy one-liners. No, it's only going to come through power greater than myself. I don't give a shit how many people are in that meeting. It's still human power. It's not going to produce the essential psychic change. Though the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, we physicians must admit we have made little impression upon the problem as a whole. So remember I was telling you, Silkworth is saying, look, we just don't know. We are doing nothing for these people. It says, many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach, and these types are real alcoholics. This is some important stuff right here. I do not hold that those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. I've had many men who had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal, which they'd be settled on a certain date favorably to them. They took a drink. See, it says one, it's singular. Right? Because that's all I have to do is put one drink in my body. Or so prior to the date, and then the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount to all others. So paramount means it supersedes everything else in my life. Right? That physical allergy will supersede the love of my daughter. It will supersede my job. It will supersede everything. It becomes the driving force in my life. I'm a slave to it. I'll keep reading. So that the important appointment was not met. Well, you know, I think, what important appointment? How about my job? I can't even tell you how many jobs I lost as a result of this disease. Right? How many times I wasn't there for my family as a result of this. I could go on and on and on and on about how many important appointments that I could not meet as a result of this. And here's some important stuff. These men were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. So the craving is about the body's reaction to alcohol. So I'm not drinking because of my childhood. I'm not drinking because my wife left me. I'm not drinking because I'm depressed. Now, will all these things exaggerate everything? Absolutely. But that's not why I'm drinking. I'm drinking because I have the disease of alcoholism. Two different things. So let's jump down on the page a little bit more. And we're going to read a couple things that help us break the stereotype of what it means to be the real alcoholic. We're also going to see some first tradition stuff in here as well. You see, because we have this thing, we have this belief system of what an alcoholic is, and we have a belief system what the unmanageability about is in the first step, and they're completely wrong, right? See, we have 4 stories in the chapter more about alcoholism. We have the man of 30, we have the jaywalker, we have Jim, and we have Fred. Now, obviously, the story about the jaywalker is fictitious. But they gave us the 3 other guys for a very specific reason, because they wanted to show us that my external conditions have nothing to do with alcoholism. My external conditions have nothing to do with the unmanageability that we're talking about in the second part of the first step, right? Again, what we talk about is that there's only one true specific thing that's going to make me the real alcoholic. It's got nothing to do with my social standing or my upbringing or my current living situation. It has nothing to do with any of that. And I'm going to read. So then there are the types entirely normal in every respect except in the effect that alcohol has upon them, right? So my external conditions obviously don't have anything to do with it. They're often able, intelligent, and friendly people. This goes back to our single and superb. This is about tradition 1. Listen to this. All these men and many others have one symptom in common. One. First tradition right here. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. This phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity, right? This is what sets me apart from other drinkers. The physical allergy. Either you have it or you don't. You can't catch it. You're born with it. You can't work yourself into it. Listen to this. It's never been by any treatment which we are familiar permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. So on the next page, which is XXXI, that's 31. The very first sentence is a question. What is the solution? Well, remember when we went back to XXVI, and it says, though we work out our solution on the spiritual as well as the altruistic. So, page 31, Roman numeral, the solution is exactly what we talked about. It's God and His service. That's simple. There's nothing else to it. And that's what the book is designed to do, to teach me how to get hooked up to God and teach me how to be of service. I'm going to read a story about Hank P. here, guys. Hank Parkhurst. He's a co-author of this book. About 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought to be treated for chronic alcoholism. He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage and seemed to be a case of pathological mental deterioration. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. And boy, I can relate to that. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. So Hank had a first step experience. This is Hank Parkhurst's first step experience right here. Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. So where is the plan of recovery? It's in this book. So, and he had his step one experience in this paragraph, right? He met the requirement of the principle behind the first step, which is honesty. And this is what happens to him now. 1 year later, he called to see me, and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name and partly recognized his features, but there all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. That's me right there. Oh my God, when I showed up at Alcoholics Anonymous, I was a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck. And today, I have self-reliance and contentment. I've recovered from alcoholism. I talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel I'd known him before. To me, he was a stranger. And so he left me. A long time has passed for no return. Why is he a stranger? Why are any of us strangers to our old lives? Because we have such profound changes in who we are. That we become completely different people. And that's been my experience. So let's jump over to the last page of the doctor's opinion. XXXII. And I'm going to read this last bit. And we just got done, they just got done talking about a man named Fitz M. He wrote the story, Our Southern Friend. I think it's on page 208, I believe. It's a great story. He's another co-author of the book. Highly recommend you read Hank P's story and Fitz M's story. They have a lot to tell us about early Alcoholics Anonymous. So this last page in the doctor's opinion. It said, however, we did become sold on the ideas contained in this book. He's not had a drink for a great many years. I see him from now and then, and he's a fine specimen of manhood as one could wish to meet. I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through and through. Right? We can't just pick this thing up in the middle and start picking and choosing and reading a little this, reading that. We need to take this book in its entirety. Because remember, it's an instruction manual. I don't start baking a cake in the middle of the recipe, do you? I have to start from the beginning. Perhaps he came to scoff. He may remain to pray. And that's my story as well. I came scoffing, but I promise you, I pray today as a result of this. You know, guys, there's so much that I could get into in so much more detail and break down so many other things in this chapter. But like I said earlier, we try to keep this thing limited to a short amount of time. But the main reason that I wanted to read this today and break down a few things is I wanted to establish to make sure we are understanding the first part of the first step, this physical allergy. When it's talking about the powerlessness, this is what we're talking about. And this is what truly makes me the real alcoholic. And I need to understand this, right? They said it earlier in the chapter about we need to understand the medical aspect of alcoholism on the human body. Because I'm going to need this information when I'm learning about step one, the second part of step one, about the unmanageability of the mind, right? That's another one of the biggest misconceptions about the first step. And we're going to get into that really deep, but the second part of the first step is the unmanageability is talking about is that I cannot manage the decision not to drink. It's got nothing to do with whether I went to jail, I lost a wife, car got repoed, all these consequences that follow. That's not what the second step is about. It's simply is that I don't have the ability to stay stopped. So I'm dropping my email again right here, recoveredalcoholic1939@gmail. Please, if you got any questions, comments, concerns, don't hesitate. If you're looking for sponsorship, reach out to me. Don't hesitate to join in on those meetings that I'm telling you about. And from page 164, my friends, I'll read a quote. And it's, may God bless and keep you till then. And much love. Take care.